G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we are talking the mid-prices in the midfield. Lots of value options. Who should you be considering for your team? Let's go.
Just done it from nowhere. Hoisted the goal from inside the centre. Shaved from the boundary. Dusty. Petty. Petrarca. Oh, wow. How good is that? The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch. I nearly said fantasy basketball there.
Yeah, I could hear that, eh?
But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy as always. And I'm joined by Luke Rogerson. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm really good, mate. I'm tired today, mate. It's my first full day back at work. So us teachers got to get back to work at some point.
Life's a bit tough for you, really.
Oh, it is, mate. You know what I say? Overworked and underpaid. So...
welcome back to the real world.
Thank you. Yeah,
Someone must have been back at work for a few weeks now.
I've been living that teacher life too long, hey. So first day back, I'm a bit tired, but
let's see if we can wake you up with some mid prices,
mate.
eh?
Before we get into the mid prices, you may be wondering why your co-host is holding a Steve Waugh autographed commemorative cricket bat on an AFL podcast.
I am wondering that,
and the reason being is because I cracked the 100 on Twitter.
Hey, he's got the ton.
So I'm raising the bat. If I had a helmet to take off, I would take it off. I know Dad's going to be pissed that I got this out of the commemorative case, but I just had to raise the bat. He's done it 100. So
well done. Now,
yeah.
Be careful with that thing.
Yeah, I will. I'll put it back here. You can only imagine the carry on if I ever get to 200. Yeah, huge news. However, still only 2 out of 3 on the trader front. So 100 followers, but...
To talk about that, I'm 2 out of 3 now too as well, but it's not the same 2 that you have. So
you've got
I've got Calvin and we both got Warnie.
Warnie.
Warnie's been the friendly one off the jump.
And I've got Warnie and Roy.
Roy, I
got a feeling they're playing with us.
They have to be. They have to be messing with us, I reckon. Especially after that tweet.
Yeah, we're out here talking about it as if we're trying to collect Pokemon or something. It's like 2 out of 3.
Got to catch them all, hey?
Yeah, they're probably like these absolute clowns. We'll mess with them a little bit. So, all good fun.
Fair play, boys. But continue to make sure you guys do follow us. I did a little spiel the other day talking about my favourite defenders on fantasy for my fantasy team. I'll probably do a few things, obviously all the positions, a week after these podcasts drop. So if you are listening onto the podcast, you'll hear it first. But again, just in Twitter, it's a good way to sort of summarise my thoughts over there as well, and you can refer back to them nice and easily. But let's get into it. The mid prices, the midfield. Now, typically, before we start naming these players, typically the mid prices in the midfield are usually the hardest sell, in my opinion, because obviously midfielders are your highest scoring players on your team.
Yep.
To be a successful mid-pricer, it's pretty hard to turn... Like, the most successful mid-pricer are the guys that started a mid-price value, and they end up going so well that they stay in your team the whole season. Examples from last year, Will Brodie, who am I thinking about?
Even like a Nick Dacos to an extent.
Nick Dacos,
I mean, he wasn't a mid-price,
he was a rookie, but like a Sicily a George Hewitt, all those kind of types. Obviously, they're defenders, they're forwards.
Yeah.
Maybe... I don't know if you could call this a guy, but a keeper, but a Bruce if he had managed to stay on the field.
It's very generous.
Yes. I mean, just looking at his average. I mean, those kind of guys, average-wise, they're there enough or close enough to that top 6 that you can keep them at least long ways into the season until when it's the luxury upgrade time. But in the midfield, you average 85, you're still, 25, 30 points away from those top 8.
So for context today, we're going to be chatting about guys who are sort of priced just under 90 and then going all the way down to kind of like your top rookies. So we've kind of got a list here of guys that we're going to talk about. No doubt there might be some people that we don't talk about that you want some intel on. So hit us up on Twitter and whatnot. But hopefully we can provide some information for you guys on the players we do talk about.
Yeah, so we'll run down basically just sort of in price order. Now, some of these first guys obviously are on the more expensive side, so you might not typically think of them as mid-prices, but I mean, we've got a draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
So we did
Yeah.
our premiums the first couple of podcasts this week, and this is just the line we sort of drew. So we're going to kick it off here with a young gun that a few guys I've seen on Twitter and a few podcasts I've listened to recently are pretty high on, and that guy is a midfielder from the Sydney Swans, Chad Warner. Priced at $785,000, priced at 88.7, so 89. He's 21 years of age, and some people are saying that he's going to take a step forward and be a big breakout this season. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, he's shown, in positive note, he's shown kind of incremental increase over the last couple of years. So 2021, he went at 66, and then 2022, he's gone at 88, and then correlating with that, his CBAs have increased, so 35% going into then 63% last year. So I think that obviously the Swannies played extremely well, except for their last game last year.
Yeah.
But they've very much shown that they want to inject speed, pace, excitement into their midfield. So that's the way AFL's going. And Chad Warner kind of epitomises that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's explosive. You see him break the lines. He'll break 50 and kick goals. And then just having a look through his stats from last year, there was a run of games towards the end of the year there where he went 103, 100, 127, 115. So it's just a pretty small sample size there, but he's shown...
Patches.
Yeah, and the previous year he didn't really crack the tunnel that much, so I kind of think last year he got a little bit of a taste for it. Hey, this is what it feels like to have a big game. So it wouldn't shock me if he comes out in 2023 and starts to consolidate and average closer to 100.
Yeah, so I think, he played 2 games in 2020, obviously not really relevant. So you'd probably call 2021 his sort of first year. So we're thinking, obviously, the phrase third year breakout gets thrown out a lot. There's some legitimacy behind it. Obviously, he's young. He did show improvement as the season kind of went on. You referenced that little patch there. His role also definitely changed the second half of the year.
I got a good stat on that too.
Yeah, so just to reference some CBAs, in the first 8 games, he averaged 48% centre bounces, and then after that, he averaged 72 from round 10 onwards. The thing is, though, that once those centre bounces shifted, the average that he put up actually didn't change all that much. So averaged 90 points the first 8 games, again, on that 48%. And then after that, with 72% CBAs, he went 88. So he actually went backwards. Now, I know there was the patches there, but before that patch, he was still playing some high sort of CBA time. So a lot of time through the midfield, and the inconsistency was still there, which you respect in a young guy. But for that reason, it makes it hard for me to really bank on him, because what you need to do is he's priced at 89. You need him to be going pretty close to maybe like 105 to be
because
worthwhile.
there's guys out there that do have that 10 points of upside, confidently. Yeah, I found that stat interesting too, Mitch. It's definitely was strange that his...
Did I steal your stat?
No. I'm kind of going to compare it to something else in a sec. But, it was interesting that just because his CBAs went up, it didn't initially correlate with good scoring. That could be a change of role. You're getting used to it as well.
Potentially.
The interesting part about that stat that I actually found accidentally was because on the website that I was looking at, Chad Warner and Callum Mills were right next to each other. So those first 8 games where you said Chad Warner was playing lower CBAs, guess who was playing higher CBAs in those games? Callum Mills. And then it was almost like immediately they decided, hey, Callum Mills is going to spend less time in the midfield and Chad Warner is going to spend more time in the midfield. So when I saw that stat, it just kind of spoke to me about maybe the Sydney coaching staff's mindset. We've got this versatile guy in Callum Mills. We're going to use him more in a versatile role, and Chad Warner's going to be our guy in the middle. So I know we're talking about Chad Warner, but it kind of just maybe highlights some of the things we spoke about
in the
last
obviously,
podcast.
If you haven't checked out the overpriced mids podcast that we did the other day, go and check that one out, and you'll hear our full thoughts on Callum Mills, who did make an appearance on that podcast. But I think like I sort of referenced, you need a guy like this. He's in the mid-price podcast, but you're picking him at this price point to sort of be a premium.
Yeah, he's an excellent
as an underpriced premium.
Yeah,
and even if he averages 100, it's decent, it's okay, but you're still 10 points off really that top 8 sort of midfield. look, 100 is not terrible, but you'd probably, for it to be a really, really successful pick, you wanted to go 105. And there's a few guys, like we talked about previously, like I'd much rather spend just like a little bit more and get up to like a Luke Davies-Uniacke. Tom Mitchell's not that much more expensive either.
Yeah.
I'm much more confident in those kind of a picks, and I'd be more willing to pay up for those guys who I think have a similar points upside and then get you closer to like a permanent player in your team. That's sort of my thoughts in it. I often find that this kind of range, this price range, there's a lot of guys like that. I usually like shopping a little bit more expensive or a fair bit cheaper. So it could definitely work. I think it would be a bold pick. But
yeah, I can certainly...
maybe a bit too bold for me.
Yeah, it's bold, but it's one that I can certainly see being rewarded. It wouldn't, again, shock me if he had that breakout year where he averaged 105, 110, but not for me. Next bloke on the list, Adam Cerra.
Yeah.
Now, this, for me, is a little bit situational. I think that potentially the people who look at picking up Cerra might have a little bit of a situation in mind, and that situation's got to do with the injury of Sam Walsh.
Yeah.
So... Cerra and some of the other Carlton midfielders kind of showed that when some of their midfield counterparts were out throughout the season, that their scoring did pick up.
Yep.
So I think the people who are looking at Cerra are probably looking at him from the perspective of, hey, what value can I get out of him between at the start of the season and when Walsh comes back, and is that value enough to then turn Cerra into a stepping stone to a premium mid? Is that kind of how you would see him?
So it's a bit of a tough one and a cloudy one at the moment, because obviously the reporting on Sam Walsh's injury is that he's out for round 1. But I've heard some things saying that he's, out for at least a month after that.
Yeah.
There was footage of him running laps the other day at, 2/3 pace, whatever the hell that means. I wonder if they've recorded his max pace and they know, 66%.
Who's doing the fractions?
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, it's tough because I agree. He's very reliant on that. He is kind of that guy that, like we've said before, they've got a decent midfield. With the addition of Hewitt, obviously you've got other good players in there, like the reigning Brownlow medalist, Cripper, and a few other guys in there. But I've got a stat in terms of when there was a player missing. So when one mid was injured, Cerra put up an average of 67% in the CBAs and averaged 105.3 points in those games. And I think that was across a 10-game sample size over the entire season. So they had a few injuries last season. Hewitt missed a lot of time towards the end. Patrick Cripps obviously missed a game in there. Walsh missed a few games at the start and at the end as well. So if he went at 105, you'd pick him. However, I think it's so dangerous when you start to say, if this guy's injured, if this... there's too many ifs, isn't it? And you really don't want to be picking a guy relying on his teammates to be injured. And again, if he was a stepping stone kind of a price, awesome, great. Let's do it. We can ride that the early season boost in value and then trade him out. But I think when you're around this price, he's priced at 88, 780,000, just 5,000 less than Chad Warner. You don't want him to be someone that you're going to have to trade as soon as some of those guys come back out because he's hurting you. Yeah. If Walsh comes back at week 4, week 5, you're in upgrade territory. So you don't want to be trading out a guy, Adam Cerra, who's sort of in that kind of weird spot where it's not bad enough to trade, but not good enough to sort of stick you close enough to those big dogs. Yeah, he's kind of in no man's land because of his price. And as we go down the list, I think there's some options that might be a little more appetizing. Yes. The only thing I will say, just to finish on Cerra, if we do find out that there's another injury or maybe there's a setback or whatever the case happens with Sam Walsh, and we know it's a much longer period of time, well, then my antennas poke up, and I am pretty keen because obviously we've got a bit more consistent data that he can reach those ceilings. He's 23 years old still, so he's still improving and a young player. So I think that he can definitely do it if the opportunity is there. It's just how long is that going to be sustained for? Yep, good call. Next player we are looking at here is, I think we should spend a bit of time on this guy because a lot of players are very hot on this guy. I think to shout out another podcast, he was a a guy most recently highlighted in the 50 most relevant by the coaches panel.
Yeah, nice.
And a few guys got very excited over there about this guy, Tom Green, for the GWS Giants.
And I think a lot of that excitement, Mitch, comes from the fact that two of his teammates from last year have departed, and a lot of people are suggesting that means an uptick in CBA percentage, which, I mean, you can see happening.
Yep.
This is a guy who in 2021 went at 69 and then in 2022 at 84, so he showed improvement. And there's still room for that CBA percentage to go up, which actually...
it's lower than I thought from memory. Like, I thought he was in there more, but only, where's the number here? 41% on the season? Like, that just seems really low for a player like Tom Green.
Yeah,
I've got
58% for 2022. So, I mean,
still, that is lower than
exactly.
you would think.
When we know that the elite midfielders in the comp kind of go around that 80 mark, even higher for some of them, you think that means that there's some upside for Tom Green. A couple of little things, however, that kind of made me a little bit uneasy. When you dig into his stats, he's not a huge mark guy. I know that when we're looking at fantasy players, we really want to see them with...
pretty inside dominant.
Yeah, we want to see him with a sort of a diversified stat breakdown. So that can be tough. If he's not taking marks and he has a game where the tackles are a little bit down, suddenly those points dry up a little bit. So that was just something that made me feel a little bit uneasy. What were your thoughts on Tom Green?
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that I think is going to get, if there's a few players out there that play multiple formats, you know, in terms of the Supercoach and AFL Fantasy, I think he shines a lot brighter in a Supercoach format because he's such a good contested player. He's sort of like this inside bull clearance guy. But like you said, it lacks a bit of those marks. He's kind of like that Hopper sort of type player, that Matty Rowell sort of type player that's obviously really good at what he does, but doesn't always translate to fantasy scores, in my opinion.
And we know the guys who go enormous are the guys who take marks and tackle.
Yeah. I think he's obviously a gun. He was a high draft pick 10 in the 2019 draft, and there's a lot of big raps on the guy. I've got a stats about games. So obviously he played games last year. Some were obviously lower than CBAs than others. But in the games where he averaged 50% or more CBAs, he went at 91.5 average.
Yep.
Which is obviously a little bit up from his price tag. But again, it's not enough for me to sort of jump on and say, okay, he's going to see an increase in CBAs and therefore he's going to take this next step. Of the guys that we've talked about so far, I'm probably the most keen for Tom Green because I can definitely see a sustained increase in his role, increase in his usage, and he's young enough and the team will look different enough that he's going to be maybe a featured point of that team. But
we've got reasons to believe, you know, in Taranto and Hopper going out, reasons to believe that his average will increase. Sorry, and
he's had flashes with ceiling scores. Like last year, first game of the season came out with a 133. That was his highest score of the season. The first three games, all tons. So he has shown that upside, at least in patches, similar to as Chad Warner. I think obviously the difference between he and Chad Warner, he's slightly cheaper, but also the absence of two of those guys that were in the midfield a lot before last season gives him that slight leg up for me. I still think that he's the kind of player that you leave off your starting team, but if he goes big in that first round or two, you can jump on, and I don't think you'll miss the boat too much. No. If that makes sense.
He did go big in his first few rounds last year, but and those people that jumped on got burnt. So,
but I don't think he's going to get stuffed around as much this season.
No, I would agree with you on that. And to support Mitch's stat about the CBAs before, you really notice a drop in his last 6 games. He fell away in CBAs, so all of his last 6 games were under 50% CBAs, and there's scores of 55, 43, 53, and 57. Like, those are pretty stinky scores. So for me, he needs CBA attendances to score well.
Yeah, I mean, and the weird thing is that, like, I don't know why I don't feel like he's the guy that can play anywhere but the midfield.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's a prolific forward, or he's not the guy that you put on a wing or in defence. Like, he is a midfield only guy. So if it was me running the team, he'd be in there 75, 80% because, I mean, that's what he's excellent at, and he's not really contributing a lot else in the team. So when you've got guys leaving, I don't think there's much of an excuse. The other thing we haven't touched on, again, the game style. maybe it's not as friendly, maybe it is, we don't really know. But if we're going to apply those concerns to other players, we've got to apply it to Tom Green as well. We can't all just have those breakout coloured glasses and just say, oh, yeah, he's coming in, he's going to average 110 or 105. When, obviously, if you have those concerns with other players, I think, obviously, it applies to Tom Green as well. So
it's definitely a fair point.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
So the next bloke we've got here, I actually saw a video pop up of this fella on Twitter, and I think the caption was like, Dylan Shiel absolutely flying at training. And the video was literally of him just running 10 metres, kicking 35, 40 metre pass. I was like, wow, he must be
flying.
Wow. This guy's an absolute gun.
Oh, the reporting. It's always fun this time of year, hey?
Yeah. Don't read into it too much, eh? You got to do your own research.
I sent a tweet out that just one time I'd love to have a report of someone saying, so-and-so's just rocked up to training, he's overweight, he's training shit. Like,
just an honest assessment.
Just an honest assessment. Don't bother with this guy, guys. But you're never going to hear those reports, obviously. We know why, but...
Yeah, sorry, Dylan. No doubt you are flying, mate.
Look, his rig looked good. I will give him that.
Mate,
there's a couple of photos going around.
He's always had a good chassis. So, statistics-wise, in the last 9 games of last year, he actually went at 98. So, at the moment... he's
98.5 after the buys.
Yeah, so he's priced at 84.
84, yep.
Okay, so if we're looking at that, then we're looking at more than 10 points of upside there. So I think if you would say, hey, Dylan Shiel is guaranteed to go at 98 or 100, you'd be very interested there.
Yeah, you'd be pretty happy with that.
However, there's a few unknowns, aren't there? So at Essendon, we've got a new coach this year. Okay, and not only do we have a new coach, but we've also got some star midfielders that are getting around in that Essendon team. So for me, something's got to give, and I just don't know what it is yet.
Do you think that he gets moved out of that midfield before Merritt?
I think he's a less talented midfielder than Merritt, but do I think Dylan Shiel can play another position?
Yeah.
No, but do I even think Zach Merritt can really play another position?
I mean, maybe a wing,
halfback. At a stretch.
They've got a lot of halfbacks.
But are you going to play? You're not going to play Merritt. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying, yeah.
And even for me, Darcy Parish, you don't think, wow, I can't wait to see Darcy Parish play at half forward or half
I mean, that's the thing with Essendon, right? They've got all these guys that they're not the most versatile of players and can't play multiple roles. So
that for me, with a new coach coming in, I feel as though one of these midfielders needs to...
I mean, maybe Shiel is the best forward out of those guys.
Well, yeah, but one of them I think has to reinvent themselves, and not necessarily reinvent themselves into a new role, but maybe to a new position, but maybe even just reinvent themselves in terms of their role in the midfield.
Right.
You know that within all AFL clubs, even though you've got, 6 to 8 midfielders, they don't all play the same role in the midfield.
You've got your sweeper, you've got your defensive mid, your first touch guy. Yeah.
So while statistically here, Dylan Shiel promises a bit of upside based on what he did at the back half of the year.
And based on what he's done in seasons past. Yeah. He's had a few seasons where he's done 98, 95 before.
Yeah, so 98's his high score, isn't it?
Yeah.
On his previous season. So he, along with everyone else at Essendon, is a watch for me.
Yeah, I think. Well, first of all, he crosses the over 30s rule.
Oh, sorry, I don't.
He's normally
I'm quick to put shit on you for that.
Yeah. But 29 and 10 months. So by the start of the season, he will be essentially 30 years old. So look, I'm not expecting Dylan Shield's best season at age 30. And again, if we put 98 as his absolute ceiling, price at 84, there's 14 points of upside. Again, you're not quite crossing that 100, 105 marker, that awkward price. So for me, it's a bit of a cross. I know some people have been sort of pretty keen on him because of his second half last year, but
feels like we're crossing a few people off this list. We might have to.
This is good. I mean, I'm not crossing Tom Green off. I'm probably not crossing off Chad Warner. Yeah. I'm skeptical. They're going to have to really prove it to me, but...
There's a couple of cheaper guys coming that I think we might have a slightly different take on.
And that's what I was sort of saying before. Like, I like to shop in that slightly cheaper price tag, but these guys probably will be unique, and just because I'm off them doesn't mean they're going to not perform well. But yeah, just sort of giving you my rationale as to why I don't think they may be the best picks. The next guy here, again, another guy getting a lot of hype in the preseason, another... good couple of photos of some pipes that I've seen going around.
Who are we talking about?
Sam Berry of the Adelaide Crows.
Yeah.
He was sneaky good last year.
He is. He's a very good tackler.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God.
I'm telling you, I don't write this stuff.
Yeah. Let's
we'll
move on.
We'll move on. No, Sam Berry.
Hanging fruit there.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? No, Sam Berry, I didn't do too much research into Sam Berry, and maybe it's because he just doesn't excite me all that much. Maybe I'm being, I don't know. Maybe I need
He's
to...
He's not a name.
Yeah, maybe I need to do more digging. It's freakish that a guy who averaged 84 last season also averaged almost 10 tackles.
I think he led the comp in tackles.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I go like, where are the rest of the points?
Where are the rest of the stats?
Yeah.
But you could look at that two different ways, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can look at it, okay, he led the comp in tackles. Like, that's a great flaw for a young player. And, if he's going to stay in that midfield, he's only probably going to get more experience and better and get more disposals, and that's probably going to lift his, and that's where the improvement's going to come from.
So you
could also look at that and go, you led the league in tackles, and you still only average 84 points.
Yeah, that's it. So he's almost averaging 40 points in tackles, and he's only averaging 80 overall. So there's only 40 points there from other stats.
Yeah.
And that's also with high 60% CBAs too.
A
So I know we talk about the fact that guys can increase their CBAs up into the 80s. I just feel as though a guy who's already averaging almost 70% CBAs needs to be getting more than 40 points from other stats than tackles.
I will say, after the buys, averaged 76% CBAs, putting up a 91 average in that time. So, again, you've got 9 points of upside just based on that alone. So I think that's probably where I expect him at a minimum. Being 21 years old, you'd expect that he's probably going to, get a little bit better. So perhaps he's a 95 to 100 sort of a player.
Still not huge upside, is it?
Not the biggest upside, but again, if he does sort of figure it out and become a bit more of an accumulator, spread from stoppages a little bit more, there is potential there. Obviously, he's looking fit.
What's your kind of, I'm not going to call it a rule because it'd be flexible, but how many points of upside do you have to hypothetically see to think this guy's going to be in my team?
Some people have like a 20 points of upside or a 25 points upside. Some people have like you've got to average this much. For me, it's very dependent on what I'm paying for the player and what I want that player to be for my team. Do I want them to be a keeper? Do I want them to be a stepping stone? What's your role in my team going to be? So with a lot of these guys, that's why I don't like shopping in this price range, because it's hard to figure out. It's hard to go and say that, okay, Sam Berry's going to go from 84, put on 20 points on that average and average 104, which he would really need to be like a keeper until you're at luxury trade time.
Yeah.
If he puts on 15 points, it's not quite close enough to those big dogs to sort of, like I said, it's that not bad enough to drop, not good enough to sort of keep long term. So for these kind of price ranges, I'm looking at that 105 range mark. When we get a bit cheaper and they're more of a stepping stone, for the midfielders, I want to be sort of in that 90 average if they're sort of like 20, 25 points of upside. That's kind of my rule. Defense, midfield, I'm looking at sort of close to that 80, 85 mark because, again, that's a bit closer to the top six in those lines. Midfield, I'm wanting a little bit more, which is why I'm usually limiting myself to maybe one or two of these sort of mid-price options in the midfield line.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Do you have a specific rule that you're thinking about, or is it just sort of...
Yeah, not so much at this stage. Like, it's only really my second year in, so I'm kind of being guided by the things that I read and by the research that I do at this stage as well. But, yeah.
Let's talk about the grasshopper.
The grasshopper. Now,
Grasshopper Jacob Hopper.
Now, Mitch, I know you're not super interested in the grasshopper. Look, I'm not coming out and saying that I would pick him straight away in my team either, but there is a world where I can see that he's got some upside. So let's have a little bit of a talk about historically. So last season, he only managed 7 games. 6 of those came right at the end of the season, and he wasn't doing anything to write home about. So last year, his average was 66, which it would be amazing if he was priced at that, but he's not. He's priced at 80. So were he priced at 66, and I think everyone would be falling over themselves to get him in. He's priced at 80. Look, I can see he's going to the Tigers, so we talk about the Tiger game style and the fact that they've only had one bloke go over 100 in the last 6 years.
I'm waiting to be sold here.
Yeah, look, see, If Hopper plays at Richmond and he plays predominantly midfield,
which I think he will,
yep. And he gets up to the 70-80% CBAs, I don't see a world where he averages any less than 95.
95?
Yeah. See, I think his role in the midfield will be predicated on that, like that tackle pressure, getting the clearances out. I think he's a guy that with that many CBAs up near the 80%, I think he can go in the 90s. Like he's shown, so 2019 he went at 92, 2021 he went at 90. For me, I think he's going into a midfield where he's going to be a very valued member of that midfield. He's going to be doing all the hard things in there, and there's no world where I see him going well over 100 and becoming a premium midfielder.
Yeah.
But he's been to the mid-90s before. He's kind of shown us that he can do it, and I think for some guys, just going to that new club is what it takes to really lock in your best footy.
I think,
and Richmond, just sorry to cut you off again, Mitch, but Richmond have historically shown that players go to Richmond and they play good football.
I'm barracking for the guy. Obviously, he's a member of my buddy footy team, but just from a fantasy point of view, I think again he strikes me very much as like a Supercoach kind of player, that inside only kind of type. I don't know if we've seen his ability to spread from stoppage just yet, and I don't think he's going to find that in the Richmond system. You referenced the 20, if he gets good CBAs, like if I talk about the 2021 season, he averaged 73%. So that's pretty high already. Averaged 89 points that season for a GWS team, which is probably much more friendly fantasy
it was at that stage, yeah, definitely.
Than the Richmond Tigers. Despite how good I think we can be this year, and I think obviously that might see some of those fantasy points come up for the Tigs, I still think that even if he goes a little bit over that, 90, between 90 and 95, which I think is probably best case scenario, you're still looking at less than 15 points upside. And again, you're not close to that top 8 mids. So for me, I actually think that, potentially he's getting a lot of hype in the other formats because he's a lot cheaper because of the AFL pricing mechanism. I don't really think it's a very good pick. And I think of all the players on this list we're talking about here, he's probably the easiest scratch for me.
Oh, of all the players. Okay, that's interesting.
So.
I knew you weren't high on him, but I didn't think he would be the easiest scratch because I know there's some people out there on Twitter
it's
that
his
are
price. It's like if he was 66, then it's a completely different story.
Yeah,
he's priced at 81. And I just don't see much more than 10 points upside.
Yeah, it could be a bit of a spicy take from you too, because I think you may have seen it as well. But getting around on Twitter, people, I don't know if it's the whole new club. Is it the new club thing?
Yeah, new club. So, he's obviously going to be playing a lot of mid time.
So he's the easiest scratch for you. Does that mean are you still going to be watching him in the preseason, or are you kind of going?
I'm probably not going to pay too much attention to him. I mean, I'll probably watch him because I like watching the Tigers and I want to see how he goes from a footy perspective. But he would have to. I mean, I don't know what he could do in the preseason to come out and make me pick him because I'm expecting him to get 70-75% CBAs.
Yeah.
I try not to get swayed by scores in the preseason.
Yeah, okay, more roll.
We've seen Jaden Short go for 170 in the preseason, come out and average 94. So I don't see a world where I start Jacob Hopper at all, really, at this stage.
All right, well, I hope the grasshopper proves you wrong. But we'll move on to the next one.
I hope you're wrong and that he doesn't prove me wrong. All right,
let's clarify that because I said that he'd average around. I said that I think he could average around 95. It's only 15 points of upside. Am I picking him in my team?
Yeah, so
no.
Even in your best case scenario?
Yeah, I'm probably not picking my team. I just have a slightly different, maybe a less
pessimistic,
less finite take than you. I think.
Fair enough. No, I think he's a shocking pick. Let's move on. Let's move on to someone else. This guy here intrigues me a little bit. Josh Ward of the Hawthorn Hawks. He is a second-year player. Had really good junior numbers, I think, from memory. And obviously, we've got a couple of big names leaving the Hawks, and he seems to be their big young gun that they want to get in there. He averaged 89 points after the buys on 28% CBAs.
Yeah, that was intriguing. Hey,
it's the weird thing. I was expecting him to have seen more CBAs. I think he actually saw more CBAs at the start of the season.
So in the first 5 games, he went closer to 50 to 60% CBAs, which is strange. And I mean, he's got some low scores in those games, but he's a guy starting his footy career as well. So how much you read into that, I don't know. But I found that intriguing too that he went and averaged. What did you say he averaged in that?
He averaged 89.
89.
His rookie year, I think that was, I don't know the sample size. He didn't come back right from the buys. I think it was like 6 or 7 games. So, again, the smaller sample size. He had a ceiling game in there. I think it's like 134.
With 19% CBAs in that game.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe... Is it a bit of an outlier? I mean, it definitely demonstrates that he has the ability to rack up good stats.
Yeah, and I think if you look back to last year, he was one of the big 3 rookies that were touted as coming out and being big accumulators. So you had Dacos, obviously, you had Ward, and then you had Horne-Francis as well. And I think from memory that I might have watched that big game, and I think it seemed to me as though Sam Mitchell just released the shackles and just said, "Go find the pill, young fella." He didn't necessarily seem to be
against the Eagles. They won by 25. Don't think that's going to happen a lot in 2023.
No, probably not. But if you can find the pill at an elite level as a junior, that doesn't suddenly stop. So. I also, with Tom Mitchell leaving this year, I also don't see a world where he goes 37% CBAs again. I think he's at least looking at more than 50, if not more. And for me, he's the guy that they're probably going to want to build their club around. Would you agree? He's their
I would
high
think
draft
so.
pick.
Yeah, I think what pick was he? Was he how high? He was number 7 pick, obviously.
Yeah.
So they've invested a lot of draft capital in him. So they've got a vested interest in kind of, getting him exposure in that midfield. They've obviously don't mind doing that. In his rookie season, came out and was in there pretty much straight away. So when you average 89 in 20% CBAs, like how high can he go if he hits 60%?
Yeah.
Could he push 90, 95? We've seen second year breakouts kind of like that before.
So
I
he's
think
priced
Clayton
at
Oliver
71.
was an example. Price at 71. So you probably want him to go, if you maybe put 20, 25 points on that, 95 is probably what I would hope to get for a player like that.
Yeah, he's
it's a big ask.
Well, he's a guy that's capable of it. Like I said, if you rack it up in those numbers in the juniors, you don't suddenly lose that overnight. So it'll be a close watch because Sam Mitchell was a bit spicy with what he was doing in the midfield last year. It'll just be interesting to see whether they've kind of settled into a rhythm with what they're going to do this year.
Yep.
I think. I know you said you're not watching the preseason too closely, but I think that...
I'd be definitely watching Josh Ward.
Yeah, so I think that we'll see some things pretty definitively about his role in the preseason, if not the first couple of games of the season.
Yes, I think so. The only thing that would maybe... I think it would be a pretty bold pick. I think it'd be a pretty brave pick because, again, he's he's cheap enough that if you see a big game from him round 1... and he's got high CBAs and matches up with everything in the preseason and the wording coming out. I think he's a guy that you can quickly jump on across and he won't get away from you too fast. But I think it would be a pretty bold choice to go with him. We reference his 133 points, but he had games where he scored 27. He had games where he scored 40. I know that early on in his career, but... he could hurt you early as well. And, when they fail at that kind of a price... there's not a lot to go to. Do you know what I mean? You've got to kind of come down to a rookie, or you find the money to go up to a premium. It's hard to find that price, but to get him in, I think it's pretty easy. So that's where I'd be kind of leaning early stages. But again, if he comes out and really smashes in the preseason, and the role is there, the scores, and you can just watch him and see that he's in for a big year, I wouldn't rule it out for me just yet. But again, he'd have to probably impress me a fair bit.
Now, let's talk about perhaps. The man that's probably been the most spoken about on Twitter and
weird as well.
In the fantasy community, Dom Sheed.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you were going somewhere else.
You're going somewhere else?
Dom Sheed, yes.
My apologies, Dom Sheed. So I suspect you're keen to talk about Dom Sheed.
I'm very keen to talk about Dom Sheed.
Absolutely. Now, he's an interesting operator because to look at him, you think, hang on, Shannon Hearn's hairline must be contagious. And then you look... and you see he's only 28 years old.
Yeah, I thought he was older. I don't know. I don't know why.
Now, I probably shouldn't be throwing rocks in my glass house over here, but Dom Sheed's a reasonably young fella. He's 28, and he feels like he's been around so much longer, I guess. That's probably...
he's our age. He's April 10, 1995. Not far from your birthday there.
Geez. So, have you kicked a goal to win it on Grand Final day?
I have not.
No, I haven't either. So I think Dom Sheed's got one up on us.
Yeah, there you go. So, yes. Obviously, I for some reason thought he was a bit older too. Maybe just I feel like every Eagles midfielder is old.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, they've achieved so much, a lot of them. So... He is, I believe he's priced at 67.
60...
If you can believe that.
What is he at? Priced at... Sorry, I'll bring it up right now. I had it just before. 66.8, yeah. So 67.
I've got a not so...
591,000K.
I've got a not so bold take here because I think this to me is pretty obvious. But if he plays a full healthy season, he's not going close to 67.
Oh,
he's going
90 plus.
Well above.
Yeah.
And so... If he plays a full healthy season, he's easily 90 plus. So straight away, there's 23 points of upside.
Yep.
And you haven't even probably stretched the estimate of where he could get to.
Yeah, I think that's very comfortable.
So you've got two questions: is he going to play a full season?
Yep.
Uninjured.
Early reports are that he's training well and he's looking fit.
Yeah.
I think so positive ticks there so far.
Exactly. So for me. This is a guy who'll probably start in my team.
He's in my team right now.
To be honest,
I think of everyone that we've talked about, and I think everyone that we will talk about today, he's the guy that I think is probably the early... I hate throwing the word lock around. I know it gets used a lot in fantasy, but he's the guy that I think is the early favourite to be locked away into my side. And he is at that price now where it's a stepping stone price. You go up a fair amount of cash when you average 90, 95 and you start at the price of 68 or 67. And I think that's enough to justify that kind of a pick. And he's, I think he's pretty comfortably going to go 90, 95. The guys in the midfield are aging out a little bit. Maybe Shuey comes out of that midfield a bit. We've already seen Jack Redden kind of come out of that midfield as well. Yeah. So it's going to be him, Tim Kelly, maybe their young guy Jai Cully might come in there a little bit, and then Shuey's going to be in there a little bit as well. So they're kind of your main guys. I don't really see a reason as to why he wouldn't be in there at least sort of like 65, 70% of the time.
Yeah, and it's just like I said, it's just a matter of health. And
I will say those scores where he's put up 95, 92, 91 in the past, they've been on like 50, 55, 60% CBA. So I think there's actually room for him to better those seasons.
Yeah,
so
especially
I would put it out of the realm of possibility that he goes and averages 100.
Yeah, especially like you mentioned with some of those other guys perhaps taking a bit more of a backseat to Sheed. So, I think he's a great pick. Of the guys on this list, I think he might be the pick. And although I mention can he be healthy, I mean, he has shown in previous years that he played the majority of the games. 2020, he only played the 17 games, COVID year. But, other than that, he's proved that he's got reasonable health.
Yeah, I like it. Let's move on to the next guy. All right, so the next guy here that we're going to talk about is a guy that he's been getting some talk. I was surprised to see the amount of talk that he was getting. But I looked into the stats a little bit more, and there might be something here. And that player is Will Setterfield for the Essendon Bombers. 25 years old, obviously moving over from the Blues. A lot of people may be optimistic that he is one of the guys. I think I've left him off a few times where I've talked about the Essendon midfield, but some people think that he might go in there and get some CBAs. He did get some, towards the very end of the year. I think it was just a couple of games. Now, keeping in mind, the Blues were pretty injured at that point. I think Sam Walsh might have been out for one of those games. Hewitt was out for a lot of those games.
Yep.
So they were kind of running out of bodies there, and he obviously might have helped fill the void, and he scored pretty decently.
Yeah, when he went in there, he when it scores at the end of the season, 101, 77, 72, and then 99 and 89 to finish off the year.
Yeah.
So, an average there over those last 5 games puts him well above where he's priced at, which is only 68.
Yeah.
So...
He's been a high draft. Like, he was the 5th pick in the 2016 draft, and he hasn't really shown the potential that I think that obviously Carlton, or the Giants who drafted him, and Carlton who obviously had him, maybe hoped for or expected. So I don't know.
He was an interesting one for me too. I'd kind of not dismissed him a little bit, but I hadn't done a lot of digging until we were about to do this podcast. And once I got into the numbers, I was similar to you. I was kind of like, there's some value there, because the other thing that I was reading too is that he went across to Essendon making it quite clear that he was looking for more
That's what he was
opportunity
looking
in the
for,
midfield. So you have to wonder how that conversation goes. You sit down, you're about to get traded to a club. You go to the Essendon coaching staff and you say, "Oh, I want to play more midfield time." If they're bringing you in, they're probably saying, we think you can.
That's like why he's there. But
exactly.
I don't know if this is the right way to go, but I'm always skeptical with that sort of stuff. I'm like, okay, well, how much leverage does Will Setterfield have? Is he getting many other offers out there? Like, that might be the reason or what they say in the interviews and things like that, but is the reality the fact that he's really only got 2 other clubs that want him in their side?
Yeah, but if Essendon say to him, look, mate, you bide your time, you're going to have to play off half-back like he was, he's probably going, I'll just stick it out with Carlton. No, the financial aspect comes into it as well.
Yep.
It definitely does. But this is a guy who's shown he can rack up the footy. So after he had that stint at the end of the year with Carlton, he actually then went back and played in Carlton's VFL finals, and one of those games included a 40 disposal, 2-goal game.
Oh, wow, okay.
So guys, just like for footy context, guys who get 40 disposals in any game, you don't do that by chance. If you get 40 disposals, you know how to rack up the footy.
Yeah, you're going to find it.
That doesn't happen by accident. So I think there's some pedigree there, obviously from juniors as well.
Yep.
And it sounded from all the articles that I read like he was keen to show what he's got.
Yeah, he also has a activated sub-affected game where he scored 5 points baked into his average. So, even just on his, general average, you put a 5 amongst those scores there, and it's going to bring your price right down. Look, he would have to impress me a fair bit in the preseason. I have to see a very distinct midfield role and feel confident that was going to continue. I'm not ruling it out, but he's got a bit of an uphill battle to prove him worthy for my fantasy side. But where I probably might have dismissed him before, just based on kind of the name and sort of before digging into it, he's now someone that I'll at least monitor sort of his role in the preseason. Would you say that you're sort of thinking the same thing? Yeah,
I was buoyed by what I was reading. But with all these guys you're watching, aren't you?
All right, let's talk about this next guy here. Back to the Wiggles. Jai Cully is a guy that I'm pretty keen on. He is
you a big fan of the dreadies?
Oh, I like
Do you still got the dreadies?
I hope so. Man, don't shave those dreadies. We need less mullets and more dreadlocks in the
less mullets?
in AFL.
Don't say that, mate.
Oh, yeah, I might have a mob after me with the mullet talk. So I think he was obviously the first pick in the mid-season draft last year. Played only 4 games. One of those games was an early sub. Obviously, 4 games, you get that discount on your average. To also have an injured score in that average as well, obviously brings your price down. When you look at a player like a Jai Cully, he averaged, what did he do? He averaged 78 points in his 3 unaffected scores. Obviously, very small sample size, but that's already over 22 points of upside based on his price.
What were his CBAs? Do you know what his CBAs were?
CBAs in those 3 games was 58%. Okay,
does he get that same time, do you think, when the Weagles have got their full complement?
Well, I think he probably should. He's a young kid. He's still 19, I think, turning 20 this season. So, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the Eagles getting young very fast. I mean, I think you've got to put him in there. And the fact that he's been drafted in the mid-season draft, come into the side last year, gone straight into the middle. I think his first game, 45%, second game, 78%. The third game, he was injured on 32%, and then obviously he came back for the final game of the season, had 50%. So I think that there's room for him to get sort of at 60%, 55% CBAs. Full preseason under his belt. Obviously, he's come in as a mid-season draft player. I'd imagine. I mean, you could probably attest to this better. That might be a difficult situation for a guy to do.
Yeah, it would take a bit.
Unless your name is Marlon Pickett. And I just see decent upside here. Maybe 20, 25 points of upside. It'd be bold. I don't know if many people are talking about him, but I think that there's something there.
Look, Mitch, I don't flat out disagree with you, but there's a reason he came in and went straight to the midfield. West Coast was shit. I hate to put it bluntly, but there's a reason why he came straight in. I think
you got Dom Sheed coming back.
Yeah, look, if West Coast get their full complement of midfielders back and they start to get in a bit of a rhythm, I probably see those CBA percentages dropping. But don't get me wrong, I can see a world where you're right and he does continue on in there. I know that they they love Cully's pressure and tackling. I know that's something that that he's renowned for, and all teams need players like that in their midfield. So for me, that one could go either way.
3 games that he was in the side. First game, 11 tackles. Second game, 7 tackles. And then the third game, 10 tackles. So
sounds like he's very good as well.
Yeah, he does sound like he's very good. And if he comes out and average, what did Berry put up last year? 88?
9.5. Oh, his average, yeah. 88,
yeah. So if I'm not saying he's going to come out and do that, but if he does that, there's 30 plus points of upside. So
I hope you're right.
Look, it's a bit of a stretch. I'm reaching a little bit. I am watching, and like I said, I don't think he's on many people's radars. So maybe just add him to the watch list if he wasn't on there already. And sort of see if he fits your structure, because, again, it might come back down to that for a lot of these guys. Let's move on quickly to the next guy. I don't know if I want to spend a lot of time on him, but I just want to mention Xavier Duursma.
Is he the...
Yeah, he's the bow and arrow. He ripped that straight off Jamal Murray, by the way.
Did he?
Yeah, that's an NBA thing. I mean...
Yeah, but how long has Murray been doing it?
Oh, yeah, I mean, a little while.
I mean, I'm not defending Xavier Duursma.
Look, yeah.
Katniss Everdeen.
I reckon we need more celebrations in the AFL. Actually, I'm all for it.
A bit more mayo, you reckon? What would you do?
Do your own thing.
What would be your goal celebration?
I don't know. Maybe
I'm putting you on the spot.
Maybe we could do like 3-3 for a goal. So bring back the goggles or something.
So the fans have to do a basic addition to work out what.
Bring back the goggles, man.
Look, I don't know. I'll give you some time to think about it. Ask the next podcast, because that's rubbish.
Oh, mate, come on. All right, but anyway, Xavier Duursma, look, his best season so far was his debut season in the AFL. He's priced very cheaply at 50. Where is he at? 55. So you see that price tag, you think Xavier Duursma, he's a quality player, but I don't know if you can do it. Maybe he sees some more opportunity. He was a sub a few times, was injured a couple of times, so that's bringing his average down. But I think there's still some pretty putrid scores in there that if I just bring up his average from last year.
Yeah, there's too much inconsistency.
I think he scored, from memory, there was so he's got a 14 in there that was a sub-affected game, a 24 that was an injured game, but he also still played a full game and put up 38, full game put up 45. It doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence. I just wanted to mention his name because I think, obviously, he's very cheap. People might be looking at him. But,
keep an eye on him.
Again, one of those guys that I think might be one of the easiest scratches on this list. Let's move on to another really cheap player.
Is it our last player as well?
Our last guy. And I've seen this guy in a lot of teams so far.
Oh, really?
I have. I've seen him getting around a fair bit.
I mustn't be looking at the right teams.
Maybe you are looking at the right teams. I don't know. But James Worpel is our final guy here from the Hawks. Priced at 52 points, 463,000. There's no doubting the fact that he's cheap.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about a different fellow. I have seen Worpel in a few teams.
Warpedo,
My apologies, people.
What are your thoughts on the Warpedo in this year, obviously, with Tom Mitchell, Jaeger O'Meara gone from the side?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will justify having him in there looking back to particularly the 2019 season. Yep. So he averaged 96. And if he were to average 96 this year, then we're talking a significant upside.
40 plus points upside.
Yeah,
so
upside.
That would make him a lock in your side. You have to have him.
Absolutely. And there's a world where you can see it happening. Hey, so as you mentioned, Tom Mitchell, Jaeger O'Meara as well. If Worpel can remain healthy, you kind of see him playing, high CBAs. If you have high CBAs and you're a guy like James Worpel, you're definitely going better than 52.
Yeah, it's pretty atrocious. Let me put it this way, though, and this I know there's a lot of people who are pretty sold on Worpel, have him as a lock, think he's going to be a comeback kind of a player. I just want to remind everyone, he played 47% CBAs last year. He was in there.
Yeah.
Now, there was a few affected games with injuries and things like that. So I don't think he's a 52, but I don't think he's coming back to be that guy that was 97 points in 2019. Now, that was the year that Mitchell, I think, broke his leg. But it was under a different coach.
Yep.
I've heard a lot of reports that the coach hates him now. I don't think he's his biggest fan. Obviously, the team is worse than they were in 2019.
Yeah. What Mitch is referencing here is the sort of 47% CBAs predominantly came in kind of the first 8 games of the season, and in those 8 games there was a 36, there was a 45, there was a 46, there was a 41. I'm assuming that 10 was an injury affected game. It wasn't.
It was not.
Oh my goodness!
Injury game.
I can't pick him just on principle now.
Yeah, that's that. Like honestly, 10
in a game,
points, a full game.
Mate, he must have been riding the pine. He'd have splinters in his ass.
Yeah. He had another 10 later that was injury infected. The last game of the season, round 16. But
oh my god,
that round 4, 10, that is a full game. So
I'm sorry,
to me,
James.
I've got to have a look first. I can't start a guy that goes out and in round 4. I want to see what kind of.
What if he gets
35% CBA, so he was out of it more so than his other games, but still 35%, 10 points. You kidding me?
Just go looking for the footy.
Yeah.
What are you going to do if he gives you a 10 next year?
When that's your most recent output, I know you've done 97 in the past. I can't, with good confidence, trust a player like that in my starting roster. If he comes out, smashes it week 1, week 2, then sure, I might jump on.
And there's still probably time to jump on.
There's still heaps of upside, I think, if he can get
true.
to that 90, 85 plus. But again, I don't want to risk having a 10 in my side for a player that is still getting CBAs. So for me, again, I'm not ruling him out, but I'm very anti-Worpel compared to the sentiment a lot of people are having out there that he could be very much underpriced.
So what about there's that old classic situation where having him kind of unlocks enough money to be able to do the thing you want. Do you know what I mean? So and that's kind of the case with a couple of these guys. And what I'm referring to is the case where you go a little bit cheaper on this kind of mid-price selection, and that allows you to just get to the premium you want, or just get to the. What's your thoughts there? Would you pick him in that situation if he unlocks something better for you at the top end?
It's a very hard question to answer because obviously every team is unique, and this is why vanilla teams are okay because the structure of your team can be just that little bit different, and it makes your team different to every other team. I think that there's a better way to find cash. I think you take Worpel down to a rookie, they're still like the rookies are outscoring their price by 30 or 40 points.
Yeah, that's it.
And they've got a much lower downside. I think that, to me, if
there's rookies
there's so much downside, like 10 points, Luke. 10 points.
I just assumed it was injury affected. I'm sorry, James, but that's not great.
Look, and James Worpel he's near and dear to my heart. I think the first, that was 2019 was the first year I started playing AFL Fantasy. He came home, I think, in the last game. Actually, I'm going to look this up. In the last game.
Yeah, you were riding him home, man.
I think the last game in our league finals came out with 134 points. Won me my finals matchup, won my first league that year against my mates. And I was cheering him home. He was a big reason that I won that league. So I love the guy. I think he's a good bloke, but I think obviously the coach doesn't. And recent history will suggest that he's a long way off where he was that second year. So you can prove it to me, and I might jump on, but yeah, bit of risk there for me. A bit too much in this stage. So to refresh, I think Shiel is my favourite guy here.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of those young guns, Tom Green, Chad Warner, potentially a Jai Cully are the ones that I'm most interested in watching in the pre-season, with a few of those other guys having to do a lot to make my side.
Yeah, and remember what we said, I think Mitch said it on a previous podcast, you can fall into the trap of trying to pick too many mid-prices as well. You
just want one.
Yeah, and you just need to try. I mean, it's easier said than done, but you need to just try and pick the right one, isn't it? That's the game. It's like you pick all the mid-prices, and you probably pick the right one, but you also picked 4 duds. You need to, pick one, maybe 2, and then surround them with your rookies and your sort of underpriced premiums as well.
Yeah, I think that'll do it for us today, guys. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel, and make sure you guys, if you are watching along, give this video a big thumbs up. Congratulations, Luke, to getting 100 subscribers. Can we get into 200? I don't know what he's going to bring into the studio.
I might buy a cricket helmet. I was a little bit worried about bringing the bat in because normally having a bat on YouTube is a surefire way to get your video reported. But
Jesus Christ, we're going to cut us off there, mate. Let's try and keep this PG. But let's again make sure you guys are subscribed. Thank you to everyone who has already given our show a rating and review. If you haven't already and you are enjoying this content in the preseason, would be amazing if you head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, and give us a 5-star rating. And we will see you guys next week. We're talking forwards. Catch you later. Bye.